You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down. So, Laura Schooler, what's new in your world?
I went to Times Square on Friday to procure in person a ticket for Adam Ant is coming to New York again in April.
Oh my goodness. Why did you have to go in person to Times Square?
He's my favorite because it cost $18 in fees to order it online. So I was like, I'll just go down there and get it at the box office.
And you braved Times Square for $18. Dude.
Yeah. And then the funny thing,
that is some frugal shit.
I know. And then the joke is my friend had texted me right before I was going down there and was like, what are you doing tomorrow? I was like, well, I'm not going to be around tomorrow, but I'm going to Times Square. And he like came up from downtown and he's like, I'm only coming if we go to some horrible cheesy place in Times Square. And so we went to Bubba Gum Shrimp.
Yes. I was like Olive Garden.
And it cost a fortune, like way more than if I had stayed home and spent the $18 on the fee.
Yeah, but it's like the fun of it. I did Olive Garden in Times Square one time, like as a joke.
Right.
Yeah, yes. It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah, I've had worse meals.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's fun.
And I got an Adam Ant ticket. And remember, I was complaining at a recent episode that tickets to, these shows cost $130, $230, whatever.
And you'll only pay $60.
Yeah, this was $49.50.
So it was affordable and your favorite artist, or one of them.
And I went out to dinner with my friend, so it was a big win.
So many wins in a row. I love that for you. That's adorable. Oh, well, do you want to hear our horror story of the week?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, let's find out. I don't know. I haven't read this. We're about to find out if we want to read this or not.
Okay.
I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, hi. I'm looking for some advice, for which I'm frankly too embarrassed to ask anyone in real life. I've run my own PR agency for about 6 years. I started out with a business partner who parted ways with me amicably around 3-year mark. And then ever since that person departed, I have not had the profit to hire a comparable senior partner. We started this as a passion project. We were both making peanuts as a result. And my partner left for a more stable income situation after they had their first child. And in 6 years, I've grown from having almost nothing to securing some clients at the $20K month retainer mark. I have support staff under me. We're on an upward trajectory despite a lot of economic craziness, but I feel like I'm at a near breaking point of burnout. I'm struggling to get us to the next level in terms of growth, the economy, turnover, you know the drill here. I do the normal things. Like I go to the spa once a month. I work out. Try not to sweat the small stuff, but I'm overwhelmed and I didn't realize how bad it was until last week when I totally snapped on an internal call and full on yelled at one of my AMs in front of some other team members. She dropped the ball on something pretty serious for a client, but regardless of the reason, I hate myself for losing my temper like that. I don't want to be that boss. Thoughts, ideas? I don't know where to go with these feelings, but I'm starting to wonder if I'm not cut out for this anymore. Oh my God, this is so sad. It's not like horrifying, it's sad.
I'm just looking at it. I know, I'm looking at it again to make sure I have all of the pieces. Mm-hmm. So here's my equal story to that. I yelled and freaked out at my cat about a year ago to the point where I made her pee on the floor. And I felt so bad that I said, I'll just never, ever do it again. And I yelled at her because she bit me. She's not.
Oh my God.
She's not nice, but I know what she's like. So, and this reminds me of that. Like, I know how you feel so horrible because you probably scared the living crap out of kind of a defenseless, person or creature or being, whatever. And you don't want to be that person no matter what, part of your life. And so you just
I'm
need
still
to
picturing the cat peeing while you're yelling at I'm sorry, I'm trying to compose myself.
I don't know, can we put cat pee
I think
in
we
the
put much worse in the podcast. I think cat pee is the least of our worries right now.
And so I just feel so I apologized profusely to my cat. And I told her I would never do it again, and I never have. I had to take a look at myself. So, if you haven't yet, you should apologize profusely to this AM
Yes,
account
I agree with that.
manager.
Yes.
Explain to the person what it was that triggered you so that they understand. Now, the AM maybe, I don't know how old they're in their 20s, perhaps somewhere, and they just don't understand the certain types of pressures in life, perhaps. I know I didn't when I was that old.
Yeah.
So to really explain to them like what it was and that you will never do it again
Yeah.
is the first step.
I
And
agree with that.
otherwise, you lost your partner, you haven't found another partner. It's very stressful. And it says you're on an upward trajectory, it sounds like,
Mhm.
to securing some clients at $20,000 a month, which is amazing. And if you're
Yeah.
really into this, then you just need to acknowledge that and move on and keep going. And I think that, like anything in life, you will find this bad thing can turn into a good thing.
Yeah. That's not where they thought the story was gonna go. When I saw the thing about 20K retainers, I thought it was gonna be like the partner resurfaced and wanted some of that money or something. It's like my head
Oh,
went in a totally different direction than where it actually went. I agree with that. I think, yes, 100% you need to apologize to that AM and say it will never happen again. But then you need to make sure that you know how you can make sure it never happens again,
hmm,
because you need to know what your warning signs are that you're approaching that level.
hmm,
If that means you need to take a week off and not tell anybody why, take a week
hmm,
off and don't tell anybody why. If that means
right,
that you need to take the afternoon off, if that means you need to take reishi mushroom herbs and whatever peaceful spirit, like whatever it
or
is that
on the
keeps.
call, if you realize to say you could
I'm so
hey
sorry. I
guys,
just got a phone call. I
I
gotta
gotta
bounce
go,
because you're
right,
too angry. You're too
yeah,
upset, and you know something's gonna come out of your mouth. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm
and
so
then call
sorry.
that. Now it sounds like the AM screwed something up very badly, and I understand the like, "Brr," but you also have to explain to them what they did that was so wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe you're a little bit, maybe not, but maybe you're a little bit frustrated with yourself because you feel like you haven't been serving your junior people enough. Maybe you feel like you didn't teach them enough the right thing to do or not do, or maybe whatever. Maybe there's some guilt or some, feeling that you haven't been hands-on enough. Who knows? Almost like a parent, right? My mother used to get mad at me when I got sick, which is ridiculous, but it's because she felt guilty, like she did something wrong that made me get sick. Like she didn't make sure I had a scarf or whatever it was. You know what I mean? So I
Yep.
think you should look at it, not that you're parents to these people, but sort of from that vantage point. Like,
Mhm.
do I have some sort of parental guilt about my staff or my company? And maybe you have to look at that or some other angle of it, that you don't even
Yeah.
realize that is bubbling up.
Yes. You need to know the warning signs. I know I have warning signs of when I'm approaching burnout, and it's usually when I have like brain fuzz and I can't focus, and people can tell that I'm like on the call but not really there, and they can't figure out if I'm why,
Listening
you know what
or
I'm
right.
yeah, and it's like that means that my brain went from processing information to just static.
Right. Yeah, because
And
maybe because you've been burning the candle at both ends, maybe because something else is going on in life, whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So that's important. I would say I don't think that I would jump immediately to I'm not cut out for this anymore,
Yeah, no, not at all.
because there's just ebbs and flows to every business, or ebbs and flows to every life, every
Aspect of
relationship.
life, right.
Yeah, it's like I don't think that that means anything per se, but I do think that it might mean you need to take a vacation as soon as you can clear your calendar and reflect and just sort of recenter, get your footing, figure out what you need in life, what's making you happy, what's not. Sign up for a class or start doing some hobby more, or there might be something else you need for more balance. But I wouldn't jump immediately to like, this is, I can't do this. Cause it sounds like this person's doing great in terms of building the business. But it is important. I mean, don't beat yourself up too much. Just use it as a learning lesson. And if this person quits because you yelled at them, you paid for an education. I mean, I think I brought this up before. My dad always says, you always pay for an education, whether you pay for a formal education or an informal, life education. And so count it as that, and then figure out how to make sure that we self-correct and, don't repeat patterns.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's not as bad as it feels right now.
It's not. It's not. It's doable. I think that's it. Everybody has breaking points. Everybody has down bad moments. I mean, it's a little bit like in crisis PR. If you have a good reservoir of otherwise good behavior that you've banked towards that person through being a good boss, then usually when you have a slip like this, they'll forgive you and move on, assuming that you don't do it again and show that it was, sort of like an anomaly. But that is why it's important, I think, to be as good of a boss as possible at all the time, so
Right.
that when you inevitably have a down moment, it's forgiven as a bad moment and not as
Right.
something that this
'Cause you're
person,
insane. Right.
right, not that you're insane and not something that you're intending or likely to repeat.
And also, if this particular AM does massive screw ups often.
Well, then you just need a more productive way of correcting behavior than
Right, right, and and
melting
so
down.
right, exactly, but it may be something that, maybe you need to hire a new AM at some point if this is not, the right employee for your company.
Yeah,
That's not really the focus of this discussion, but, that's a possibility too.
yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's all I have to say about
Yep.
that. Do you have anything else?
No,
Words of wisdom? Okay, I think it's a
all of my
wrap.
wise words have been uttered.
I don't know about that, but maybe on this topic. So, do you want to get into our news of the
Yeah,
day,
I saw this and I
which
thought
is
that
also
you would
horrific?
be particularly interested in it because
Yes.
it was from Axios in November. One third of US newspapers as of 2005 will be gone by next year. So, however many there were in 2005, in less than 20 years, 33% of them will no longer exist.
So so this report comes from Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism, Media and Integrated Marketing Communications, which is in Chicago.
And there's a map of local outlets by county, mostly local papers. And there's these zones where there's zero newspapers. If you look at Alaska, more than half the state. In Texas, there's all these areas, just no local news anymore.
Mhm.
Up in Maine, it looks like huge areas where there's no local news. And it's funny, I talked to my dad about, he lives in northern New Jersey, and there used to be the Bergen Record. And he said they might, and now they call it the Record. And he's like, they might as well just call it the Passaic Record because every story in it is about Paterson, New Jersey, which has nothing to do with where he lives at all.
Yeah.
And it's mostly online. It's like newjersey.com, I think, now most of the time. And there's just nothing. And it's, because the model didn't work anymore with the internet,
Yeah.
advertising, etc. It's unfortunate for many reasons, but why do you think it's particularly unfortunate, April?
Well, I think the hardest thing is that if you're in a community where you no longer have an independent source of news of what's happening in your community, then everything is going to be reduced to social media, which is already sort of happening. So then it's reduced to, okay, the Williams, Arizona Facebook group next
Hmm.
door and whatever people post on there. And that
Right.
can
And it's all
be,
self-generated,
it's all
not
self-generated
not
news,
professional journalists.
which, so I mean, even recently, there was a controlled burn happening near me, but I wasn't sure whether it was a controlled burn or whether it was a forest fire. And it was like, oh my God, where do I look to find out whether
really what this is.
Yeah. And so
Mhm.
then you have to go to social media and hope that the people on there have already posted about it and know what they're talking about. And it's not to see, people are full of false information. It's just that then there's not an objective source of information
Mhm.
about your local community. And then it also sort of forces people to either just stop paying attention or only pay attention to national and international news, which then I'm not going to say that that's bad, but it reduces us all to the same macro news where it sort of feels disconnected from real life and our
Right,
own
watered
communities and
down.
our own realities. And it's like, oh, we're now no longer state focused, community focused. It's suddenly now, everything is federal or international, right?
Right.
And it just sort of makes it feel like that information is no longer available.
The other point they make is that most communities that lose a newspaper don't ever get a replacement, not even online. So we're not just talking about the actual newspaper,
Yeah.
where 12-year-old kids used to ride their bikes and deliver their papers around the block and stuff, like in the country and the suburbs. It's not even online. Like, it just is ceasing to exist.
Right.
So there are 6,000 newspapers left right now, and there used to be almost 8,900 in
I
2005.
saw that. And over the last 2 years, they're vanishing at an average rate of more than two per week.
And I guess this is advertising. There's no business to support this.
And I think people are being asked to pay for all these other things now.
Streaming things, and so they
Everything.
don't have the money
Netflix,
to pay.
Hulu, the New York Times, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube. I mean, at a certain point, you have to cut costs. And if the quality of your local newspaper doesn't warrant paying whatever you were paying, or doesn't, it
Right.
feels like, I don't know, I'll just get the news on Facebook. I don't think people meant to kill newspapers by not reading them. I think they just sort of started relying too heavily on social media to get the information, not realizing that a lot of what's on social media was repurposing what had been in the newspaper that they weren't paying for, but
Right.
now it's gone.
So here's something else that the story says, that hedge funds that bought up big chunks of the newspaper industry have pulled back. Those companies bought hundreds of newspapers to squeeze extra profits from them, but industry shifts, including dramatic advertising slowdown, have forced those hedge funds to dump papers quicker than they expected.
Mhm.
So it says, ironically, newspapers are increasingly being sold back to family owned newspaper chains if they're not already completely shuttered. But those groups aren't nearly as profitable as the major family owned newspaper firms of the 90s. So, yeah, big business got involved, and they weren't in it for the love of journalism or news. They were in it to make a buck out of advertising. And that is unfortunate. But I'm talking about the hedge funds who bought them.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
And so
Yeah.
now the family owned business, some of them, it sounds like, are trying to buy them back. And I don't know how viable that is in
They
the
might
long
have
run.
also bought them for control, but we don't know that either.
It's
So,
just, I guess it goes along with the vanishing of mom and pop stores. Nobody shops anymore. Everybody orders on Amazon, and that's it.
in a way, it's almost killing the American dream. I hate to sound
Yeah,
super
no,
sort of like
totally. Small
melodramatic
town
about it, but
America and all of that, community,
it's
everything.
no, yeah, it's killing all of that because then everything is homogenized and everything is coming from the same place. And then our news sources are fewer and further between, which I mean, it's almost like back to the beginning of television where everybody only had three channels.
Hmm.
But it's
Right.
happening in this sort of macro way that it's harder to
Right. In
see.
the Matrix kind of way, that's a little
Yeah,
bit
and it's like, here
scarier.
we go again. It's scarier, right? It's scarier.
It says in the story that a lack of a solution to this has prompted regulators and philanthropists to try to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
There's a coalition of nonpartisan philanthropies planning to commit more than $500 million over the next 5 years to initiatives that support local journalism.
Mm,
And state and federal lawmakers are considering a wide array of regulatory solutions, from news vouchers to tax credits. I
yeah.
don't know the details of that. I don't know. I mean, these are things, it's sort of like public libraries and public schools, public newspapers. And maybe that's where the vouchers and tax credit aspect comes in.
Mhm. So the authors of this report, they did this study, and in the report, the authors have argued that the dynamic poses a far-reaching crisis for a democracy, as it simultaneously struggles with political polarization, a lack of civic engagement, and the proliferation of misinformation and information online. And I agree with
Right.
that wholeheartedly. I mean,
You know,
it's a much more academic way of saying what we just said in about 4,000 words in a paragraph. But I do agree with that, and I think that it's alarming. But I'm glad that there are people that are trying to figure
focused.
out how to solve it.
Yeah, me too.
It's concerning. So I don't, I mean, I guess the only other takeaway is that if you still have a local newspaper and you value the idea of it, maybe you subscribe and maybe you cut Hulu or Apple TV, or, if it's something you value.
Part of this funny, like my dad, is subscribed to the New York Times forever, and it's gotten too expensive for him. So he reduced from every day to just, getting it delivered, like the actual paper, to a lower number of days a week. And then he was like, I got to reduce it even more. It's so expensive now.
Yeah.
But part of the reason why he did that is it went from being, I don't know, $30 a month to now, it's hundreds of dollars a month. My dad's just not, as a senior citizen, isn't
And
paying
that's
that.
right. That's the other problem.
So, and they have to do that because they've lost so much advertising, right?
Yes. Yep.
They need to
That's the
make
only way
money
to do it.
somehow. But people on fixed incomes or lower income or whatever, they can't afford that kind of money.
Mm-mm.
So,
Mm-mm.
I mean, I went in to buy a paper because a client was in a couple months ago, and I was like, what happened to when papers cost 75 cents? And the guy started laughing. It was $4.50. I was like, what? For one paper today? Oh, the world.
Oh, the world. I think that sums it up. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions, and to share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it'll help us to reach new listeners like you.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time. We stopped trying to do it together.
I know,
It
it's so
was too
bad.
awful.